Championship fight is heating up in Budapest and the F1 fans are hungry for more. Welcome to the Grid Talk podcast, where, if you hadn't guessed by that awful opening salvo, we are previewing the Hungarian Grand Prix in Budapest this weekend. I'm your host, Tom Horrox, and I'll be winging it today with the Bernie Ecclestone of Grid Talk himself, Mr. George Howson. I'm sorry about that comparison there, George.
I mean, if we're going Supremo, I very much appreciate that. If we're going his comments over the last 10 years at least, then that's probably not great. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to Magyar Nagadic this weekend. Absolutely.
Nice, love it. And where do you stand on sprinklers?
They're great for gardens. Fantastic.
Yes, they are. Fantastic. Cool. Okay, so be sure to follow us on all our social media at Grid Talk UK, wherever you can find the @ symbol. And if you're feeling extra generous, please consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive access and behind-the-scenes content like our Beyond the Grid Talk podcast, and as well as occasionally unfiltered outtakes from time to time as well. Always good fun. So we're going to get straight into them for the Hungarian Grand Prix. We've had lots of iconic moments over the years, George, and the first Grand Prix back in 1986, the first Grand Prix to be held under communist rule. We've had defensive masterclasses from multiple world champions. We've had breakthrough wins, crazy results, one driver taking the start, and even some 10-pin bowling at turn one. But what specifically is your standout moments from the Hungarian Grand Prix?
Oh, there's so many. This track just produces drama, and you've mentioned quite a few of them there. I mean, Formula One puts up the race highlights from 2014 today on their YouTube channel as we record this. That was an absolutely incredible race, so unpredictable. And we've seen so many of them. Hungary used to have a reputation as producing relatively dull races because you can't overtake there. But you look back at the history through it, and it's always produced classics. Yeah, Piquet's opposite lock overtake on Ayrton Senna in 1986. Nigel Mansell's pass on Senna in 1989, coming from 12th on the grid. Jenson Button getting his first ever F1 race win in 2006. Alonso got his first win here. Piastri got his first win here last season. It's just produced so many classic moments throughout the years. It's always eventful, and especially when it rains as well. It doesn't very often rain around this track, but when it does, it causes absolute chaos. So, I'm so glad this track is staying on the calendar for as long as it is, and long may it continue. This will be the 40th race here in Formula One, and there's not been that many dull ones. Keep it coming.
Yeah, I didn't realize there'd been quite that many. I don't remember the first one. I wasn't a Formula One fan in 1986, but I was around, unfortunately. But yeah, I didn't realize it had been sort of that. I think of 86 as sort of 15 years ago. I don't think of it as 40 years ago. So yeah, for me, like the stand-up memory, as a proud Brit, I always look out for the Brits, obviously, and my defining memory of Hungary is like it's good for the Brits. I remember Damon Hill winning a race here. I remember it might have been his first race. I remember obviously that coming very close to winning Ferraris here as well. You've already mentioned obviously Jenson Button, Lewis Hamilton, all getting very important wins here over the years, and obviously last year with a breakout win for Piastri, not British, but in a very British car. So yeah, that for me, it always seems like a happy hunting ground. I'm always very happy with the results and in Hungary. So yeah, it's very long may it continue, as said. But you've mentioned obviously that it's got this bumper extension. It's running until 2032, which was signed back in 2020. But as a result of that, they've been able to do this huge redevelopment of the pit and paddock building and the main grandstand, bring it up to date with modern standards. So obviously, without that extension, this probably wouldn't have been possible. So what does Hungary add to the calendar for you, and why should it stay?
Well, I think the fact that it's the only race really in Eastern Europe, I mean, they'll say they're Central European, but if we're talking about the old days of like the communist times and stuff like we mentioned before, it's the only kind of race from that region. There is nowhere that's close. There's not even a race in Germany these days either. So it's very important to have it for that point of view so that all the fans from all over there, back when Kubica was racing in Formula One, loads of Poles came over. Back when Petrov was racing and Kvyat, loads of Russians used to come over before the Russian Grand Prix became a thing. It's a very important race to have on the calendar, and I'm glad they've been able to do that redevelopment because Formula One's always evolving, the needs of the sport are always there, and we're seeing the attendance is absolutely booming. So with more people comes more VIP people at the end of the day. You need to serve those, you need those facilities there, and whether it's right or wrong, if they don't upgrade it, they're going to be left behind and they're going to fall out of favour and they're going to fall off the calendar. We've seen big redevelopments to the likes of Silverstone in recent times. Monza's going through one at the moment. Hungary's is still going on. There's going to continue to add to it ahead of the 40th anniversary of the first race next year. So it's what the European rounds are having to do to survive. And if they don't do it, they drop off the calendar like we've seen well, like we're going to see with the likes of the Dutch Grand Prix as well. So for me, it absolutely deserves its place on the calendar. There's been so many classic moments over the years. I say quite a bit that bad tracks can produce good races and good tracks can produce bad races, like we saw with Spa last time out. But, Hungary relatively consistently delivers. There's always drama there. So it deserves its place on the calendar, absolutely.
Yeah, and you don't have to have overtakes to have an exciting Grand Prix. I mean, who remembers that 2021 Grand Prix with Fernando Alonso proving that he's the best slow driver in the world? And just like I say, you look back at great results. I mean, this is another reason why I like tracks like Imola, because it's not always about just flying past at 200 miles an hour, and just sometimes let them fight. We don't have to see overtakes at every corner. It just sometimes the not knowing is the good bit. But we're going to move on to the on-track action for the weekend now, and we're going to start with a massive contrast as we look at the battle from 1st to 10th. So bit of an odd comparison, I'm sure you can appreciate, but McLaren top with the standings with 516 points, mean with Alpine's lowly haul of 20. If McLaren win the race, it's very likely that they will be officially out of the championship hunt. Now, I know this will come as no surprise to a lot of people, but given Alpine's pace in pre-season, does it surprise you that mathematically they could be out of contention before the summer break, potentially? And what do you put that down to? And obviously the contrasting fortunes of McLaren and Alpine for this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, McLaren have just kicked on so well. I mean, they obviously won the Constructors last year, but it was very tight between them and Ferrari. And we can criticise Ferrari for falling back, for not being fully optimised, and those are fair criticisms. But McLaren are just absolutely flying, I'm sure if they keep going at this pace, they will have the highest ever Constructors total. They'll be close to 1,000 points, because even Max Verstappen, when he was winning every single race a couple seasons ago, the second driver was nowhere near him for the most part. So the actual constructors total was never ludicrously high, but McLaren are absolutely heading for that. They've had 3 1-2s in a row. They've had 4 1-2s in the last 5 races. They are absolutely flying right now. So we can criticise Alpine, and don't worry, I will. But McLaren have been absolutely record-breakingly good this season. They have been incredible. But yeah, Alpine, I mean, flatter to deceive really when it comes to testing pace and all that. It just shows you can't trust testing times, because you don't know what they're doing. You don't know if they're sandbagging. You don't know if they're going for these headline lap times. And clearly they were trying to do that, but even then weren't really blowing the field away. But it comes down to a few different things. They've created a car that is clearly difficult to drive. Franco Colapinto is a very, I think he's a decent driver, but he's really, really struggling in that car. Jack Doohan was not pulling up any trees either. Pierre Gasly seems to get a decent amount out of it, and he's picking up points. I mean, 20 points for him by himself is pretty good. That's not too bad for a midfield runner. But overall, the car is just not particularly good. The engine isn't helping. They claim they're losing 2 or 3 tenths a lap every lap because of the engine compared to the rest of the grid. And I can believe that. I do think that's probably accurate. And with how tight the midfield is, and we'll get onto the points like we were speaking about before the show, it's so tight in that lower midfield. And especially in qualifying as well. So if you're 2-3 tenths off your teammate or 2-3 tenths off the competition, that's the difference between 10th and the back. So there's a few things going on there, but overall, you have to say, with the resources at their disposal, they're a works team. They are funded literally partly by the French people, by the French government. It has been a monumental failure. It really, really has been. They're going to be begging that Mercedes produce a good power unit next year to get them back up the grid. But even then, operationally, they're an absolute mess.
Well, yeah, harsh words indeed. And people say that I have bad things to say about Alpine, but yeah,
there's nothing good to say about them. How?
No.
10th in the constructors, they're last. Yeah. There's nobody worse than them.
Gasly's doing a great job. That's the one positive. And if you look at, I know it's very simplistic to say this, but if they had someone scoring similar points to Gasly, they would be in the fight with everyone else. They wouldn't be adrift in 10th place. And I know obviously it's only 15 points. That's one podium and you're back in the fight, but they seem a million miles away from a podium, and they've only scored 20 points in the first 12, 13 races. So it's looking difficult for them. But moving on to some slightly more or less depressing facts. So a wise man once described Ferrari's upgrade last weekend as the Hail Mary upgrade, although it did lead to a strong race performance from Hamilton and a podium for Leclerc. Do you think this is enough for them to push on? they need to outscore McLaren by 23 points per race to make a fight out of it in the championship. So obviously that's not happening. But for 28-point cushion to Mercedes, is it just about holding on now?
It is. It is. I mean, they'll want to kick on a bit as well, especially, with Monza coming up pretty soon as well. They'll want to improve. They'll want to be clear of Mercedes. And I think that'll show progress in the second half of the season, really. They just need to consistently be there. They definitely do look better. I mean, Hamilton obviously made two mistakes in both qualifying sessions, the sprint and the regular qualifying. So, the car was not to his liking at that point, but in the race, it was absolutely on fire. It was doing really well, and Charles Leclerc got a legitimate podium place. So I think they have taken a step forward. That car does look better. And, with a rear suspension upgrade like that, it's obviously going to come in handy everywhere, of course, but around a particularly kind of downforce heavy, a bumpy track, a track with quite a bit of elevation in places as well, you think that would really help them out coming into this weekend. And of course, nobody has more wins around Hungary than Sir Lewis Hamilton. 8 wins here. The next best guy's got 4, Schumacher. He is absolutely incredible around here. So if he's going to get that that first podium, that first ever actual Grand Prix podium for Ferrari, it's got to be this weekend.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I hadn't even factored that into my thought about Lewis Hamilton's record around here, and he could match his Silverstone total as 9, which is the record for any wins around any circuit. So it is a possibility, and we can do that. Would be amazing to do that in a Ferrari and to get that record. And but I think it's the second half of the season for me for Ferrari is more about winning races and trying to get some form of pride out of the season after saying they were going to fight for a championship at the start of the season. This never materialized. But the team that is directly behind them in the championship, Mercedes, Kimi Antonelli has had a wretched run of late with his Canada podium, his only points in the last, in any race since Miami, sprint or otherwise, which is nearly a third of the season. And Russell has finished every race in the points apart from 11th in Spain. Is it just a case of too much too soon for the teenager? And how do you fancy Mercedes' chances of trying to pull in on that gap to Ferrari this weekend?
It's going to be difficult. I mean, George Russell got a very unlikely pole position here a couple seasons ago when Mercedes were not looking particularly great. Kimi Antonelli produced the performance of the season last season in Formula 2 around this track. So if they're going to recover, it's going to be somewhere around here. And if they have a good qualifying, it's a track that's difficult to overtake around, as we say many, many times. But I hadn't realised how bad Antonelli's form had actually been recently. I mean, the podium in Canada, unbelievable. Spain, mechanical retirement, can't do anything about that. But the first lap incident with Austria, that was all on him, rookie error. Britain got took out from behind by Hadjar, couldn't really do much about that. Wasn't looking particularly great anyway up until then, in fairness. But Spa, my God, I mean, that's the weekend where you're like, this is rough. He had 2 chances. He had 2, obviously the regular Grand Prix race and the sprint race. Qualified so poorly for both of them and was just relatively nowhere. He really, really looked out of his depth, unfortunately. But, he's 18 years of age. That's 4 years younger than Hamilton was when he made his debut. Max Verstappen, when he made his debut at a slightly younger age, he made mistakes. He made errors. He had bad weekends. Not as many, admittedly, but it's a tough one because I did listen to your Monkey Seat show, you and Carl's Monkey Seat show earlier today, and I did take on board some of those points. It may well be a season too soon for him than what would have been ideal, but Toto Wolff was desperate not to lose him like he did with Verstappen 10 years ago, so he had to promote him, especially with Hamilton leaving the team. So maybe ideally he could have spent another year in Formula 2, but he's clearly supremely talented, and I do think he'll turn it round. And this could well be the track to do it. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to kind of catch Ferrari because now it's all about how many upgrades you're going to have potentially between now and the end of the season. Ferrari aren't going to have any. I'd be surprised if Mercedes have many because they're all going to be focusing fully on 26. And you've got 2 drivers in Leclerc and Hamilton that are getting more comfortable with the car, getting more consistent, and Mercedes just seem a little bit off balance at the moment. So Ferrari looking strong for that second. I'd be surprised if Mercedes can make too much ground up on them.
Yeah, I did get a little bit nervous when I realised, as you probably heard when you listened to the podcast, that Alex Albon is just 9 points behind Kimi Antonelli. And the bet that myself and Carl on our podcast are going is that if Antonelli finishes 7-4 higher in the championship, I win the bet. 8-4 lower, Carl wins the bet. And the loser has to podcast naked. So we're very much hoping that Antonelli has a better second half of the season, because I'm on a good run of like 3 for 3 with my bets. So I want to keep that run going, and nobody's going to enjoy it seeing me there, stalk us on a podcast. But if you have been enjoying this podcast, not my nudity, we would love it if you could take 5 and leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts as well. And if you're listening and you aren't currently subscribed to the channel, please consider helping us out with a like and subscribe, and do let other people know about us as well. Word of mouth, it's a great way to grow as well. But we're moving into the second part of the show now, and we're going to be talking about Red Bull. They ran their first race under their new team principal, which wasn't Christian Horner, for the first time in Red Bull's history, not having Christian Horner at the helm. Laurent Mekies landing a sprint win and a P4 in his debut weekend, and it seems that the Max Verstappen to Mercedes rumours have now cooled. And Tsunoda did look like he had a strong weekend, even if it didn't yield any points. They've had double podiums here and multiple wins here in the past. So can you see this as being the start of a slightly better run of form for Red Bull?
I'll be surprised, to be honest. I mean, Tsunoda looked a lot better at Belgium. He looked very good in qualifying, got into the top 10, which is rare for him. No points, though, still to show. I mean, we've talked about Antonelli not scoring quite a bit. Tsunoda's not scored in 6 races. It's not great. It's really not great. That car's not great though as well. It's a difficult one with Verstappen. I think that it's quite going to be quite polarizing in a sense. It's either he's going to pull out a miracle qualifying lap, stick it on pole position, or get second place and take P1 going into turn 1, and then just be awkward and trying to hold the McLarens up. And whether he'd be successful in doing that for the whole race, I doubt, but stranger things have happened. They couldn't get past him in the sprint during the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, so anything's possible there. But yeah, I mean, I'll be surprised, because this is a track, obviously, 12 months ago where Max had a meltdown, to put it relatively mildly, unfortunately for him. So if things aren't going his way, if he's stuck in the midfield fighting with the Mercedes and the Ferraris, I do fear the worst, unfortunately. I'll be surprised if Red Bull do well around here, because again, it's a difficult track in terms of how bumpy it is, how undulating it is. It's quite dusty as well. I mean, it's so hot in Hungary at this time of year usually. It's absolutely baking hot, and that is all going to kind of contribute to a car that is already a bit off balance, already on the tip of an iceberg, really. It looks like, just push it round sort of thing and it'll tip around. It's going to make it even worse. So I think if it's hot, it's going to be a difficult race for the pair of them.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and not to stoke a fire here, but if Max Verstappen were to do something when the red mist descended, like he did earlier in the season, 4 penalty points would give him a race ban for Zandvoort. So I'm just poking the bear there. I'm just poking the bear. We know that's not going to happen, but just putting it out there. If he does do something crazy, he could still get a race ban. So and then they would come off after Zandvoort, and then we can stop talking about this. But yeah, no, I think Mekies had a solid start there. I think I think he'll be a calming influence on the team. It's going to be a lot less Hollywood and a lot more practicality. Not going to be just playing for the cameras all the time. So let's see what he can do. It's going to be the long term thing that's going to be the where he's going to be judged, because there's just so much to do there. But another team with a lot to do, which is why they've thrown in the towel for development for 2026, is Williams. But they did still get a strong points haul at the weekend, 8 points from the race, and then Carlos Sainz bagged in some points in the sprint as well. They do have a 27-point gap back to Sauber. They're never going to be catching Red Bull ahead, but 35 points clear of 9th place Haas. So it's so close in there, apart from Alpine. So do you think that they can hang on to this? And what's their focus going to be for this race and the rest of the season? Because it's like, do they put all their eggs in next year, or is it a situation like we had with Robert Kubica in 2008? There's a chance to get some good results here, and then they just decide not to do it. No, next year's our year, and then all of a sudden they've got a Haas 2020 on their hands.
Well, they'll be hoping that doesn't happen. I mean, yeah, they were sliding for a bit. Williams, they were looking a bit precarious in that fifth place. There wasn't, that gap between them and the sixth place team. Sauber was really, really closing down, particularly after the Hulk's incredible podium. But they got some points. They got some good points as well, both in the sprint and the Grand Prix race as well, from both drivers. So I think that's a real positive point. I think most teams are pretty much going to shut off development at this point in terms of, this year and just focus fully on next year, because that is, of course, the important thing. That's, Williams are not going to realistically get fourth place. They're not going to improve from fifth. Fifth is the best they can do. And I think the teams below them are relatively too inconsistent to be able to mount a challenge like that. And they got two very handy drivers in the form of Albon and Sainz as well. So I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be around the lower end of the points this weekend. This is a track that recently they struggled around back in the 90s, back in the day. They were amazing around here. They won here all the time pretty much. But over the last 20 years, probably, it's been a long time since Williams had a really good result around this track. I can't even think, to be honest. But yeah, I think they're going to be just lower end of the points. And that's got to be their aim. They just need to outscore the likes of Sauber and Racing Bulls and Aston Martin. And again, with how inconsistent those teams are, I think they will. So I think they'll be all right. And they should just switch the focus to next year, really.
I think their saving grace will be, like you say, Sauber also switching their development, because we've been saying it for years, waiting for the Audi money, but the Audi money is finally coming, and they actually seem to be operationally sharp now. Sauber, they've really focusing heavily on next year, and they're finally starting to put the race results together, and their upgrades look decent. I still think they're still probably the ninth fastest car, but they've been making it count, and they've got two drivers there. Bortoleto finally breaking out of a strong race performance and really, really showing up Hulkenberg, and he's been out qualifying Hulkenberg comfortably for a lot of the season as well. So how do you rate those two drivers as a pairing? Where are they at in their respective development? And can they push on? You've said you think Williams will be fine, but is there a chance they can push on? I must say that Sauber have never achieved a fifth place except with a BMW engine. So I think the highest they've ever got is sixth place, not as a works team. So that's looking like there's a possibility they can do that again. Obviously, it's very close, but they do seem to be the form team at the moment with the drivers.
They do, and it's with both drivers as well. Like you said, Bortoleto getting some points. I think he's been really solid for most of the season, really. Just been unlucky in a sense in the fact that car around most tracks this season has been one of the worst on the grid, but it really has had some really incredible moments. Of course, the podium at British Grand Prix, of course, that is always going to stand out, but it wasn't a flash in the pan, not completely. Hulk's got some really strong finishes throughout this season, and it's great to see Gabby getting some points now as well. I mean, I'm sure there's been some criticism from some quarters saying, oh, well, how come Hulkenberg, who's nearly 40 years old, how come he is able to get this out of this car? And it's like, well, the guy's been driving midfield cars and making the most out of them for 15 years. Bortoleto was like 5 years old 15 years ago. So, that just shows you the difference between them like that. But I think it's a fantastic dynamic. You've got Hulk, who's a very experienced driver, someone who has never had a chance in a top team, really. The closest he's really been to that has been some of the Force Indias over the years that got podiums every now and again in the hands of Sergio Perez and drivers like that. But he's never had a chance at a top team. Until, of course, next year, potentially with Audi. They're going to be a works team. There's a lot of optimism around there, and they are making the most. I've said they're the anti-Alpine. They are making the most out of their car, which I don't think is particularly great. Jonathan Wheatley's made a big difference there. We've got Mattia Binotto there as well behind the scenes. They're recruiting the right people, and I think the drivers are a really good pairing. You've got an experienced driver and a rookie with a lot of potential. I really do like Bortoleto. I think he's a real prospect for the future. And yeah, he's got a bit of confidence now, 2-point scores in the last 3 races. I can really see it rolling here. And I can't wait to see the reception he's going to get in Brazil later this year. There's not been a full-time Brazilian driver in Formula One for way too long. And I'm so glad we've got one back. So I really do think it's an exciting time for them. They're going to have the same lineup next year. And, we've seen Alonso compete in Formula One to nearly his mid-40s now. So there's no reason why Hulk can't keep going if he's still competitive.
Yeah, no, fair point as well. Yeah, and Nico Hulkenberg just been so unlucky in getting those. Just never seems to get the right break. But now he finally seems to be, like you say, getting a decent run of it, and a great sliding doors moment. The backup plan for if Mercedes couldn't sign Lewis Hamilton was Nico Hulkenberg. Can you imagine a different world now where we have Nico Rosberg still racing and 5-time world champion, and Nico Hulkenberg is a 2 or 3-time world champion, and it's a completely German super team dominating the sport. It doesn't it's just insane to think that how things can be different on just a signing of a bit of paper. It's insane. But we're going to lump the last three teams we haven't spoken about yet together, which is Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, and Haas, because they are all separated by 6 points, which is absolutely nothing in modern Formula One. They've got very different team dynamics. I'm going to give you a bit of license to go out and talk as much as you want about these teams. But you've got the rookie Behrman and the teammate Smasher Ocon. You've got the rookie Hadjar and the rejected Lawson, and the rookie Alonso and the boss's son Stroll. So how Aston Martin always seem to get bottom end points here. Alpine have won here. RB have had solid points here over the years in various guises. Is this a chance for these lower end teams to steal a march on the guys in front?
It can be. It can be. It all depends on how reliable they are at the front. If they make any mistakes, if a Tsunoda, if a Antonelli, really struggles around this track, which it can easily happen, of course. So there's an opportunity there for sure. It's definitely possible, but. Yeah, I like those nicknames you had for those guys. It feels like Avengers Assemble sort of things of of Formula One drivers near the back of the grid. Yeah, I mean, Haas, it's kind of sad to see them down in 9th place. They were doing really well earlier in the season and just kind of slid down there. Had some bad races. They got some points in the sprint, at least, during Belgium. They looked good there, but in the actual Grand Prix race, not really there, unfortunately. Behrman has been so good at the start of the season, and the car has probably tapered off a bit. But he's been making some mistakes, and I cannot forgive him for what he did at the British Grand Prix. I mean, listen, we've all made mistakes. We've all done some stupid things while we're driving, but that's the second time he's been done for a red flag offence in practice through this season. I mean, even if it wasn't a red flag, he did 150 miles an hour into the pit lane. That is a severe penalty. That is really, really bad, that. And he becomes the first driver to get 4 penalty points on his licence as a result of that. So... he's got a lot of talent. I really like him, but he's in a bad run of form at the moment. Ocon's doing his best in that car, but it does seem a bit inconsistent. Of course, Ocon's only Formula One win came here 4 years ago now, 2021. Luck was definitely on his side that day, but he had to take it, and he did. He drove superbly that day. So if he gets a good qualifying session, he knows exactly how to make things awkward for the guys behind him. And Haas, of course, not partial to a strange strategy call. Magnussen, I remember, doing a wacky strategy call here a good few years ago that really shook things up. So they can definitely produce when it comes to that. Aston Martin looked pretty good at the home race in Silverstone. But in Belgium, absolutely dismal. I cannot believe how bad they were. I think they qualified 19th and 20th for the Grand Prix. They're right at the back. They've made some places up in the race, but absolutely miles off it. They do normally get lower end points, you're right, with that one. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
No. I was just saying, just as well. The time when Ocon won the race, who was second? Sebastian Vettel and an Aston Martin.
He was.
So they've got previous here.
They do. I mean, I think he was disqualified after, but he still finished on the road second.
That is true. That is true. I'd forgotten all about that.
Second on the road. Daniel Ricciardo still got that second place in Australia 2014 for me. He was the real MVP.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to take a big turnaround for them. But of course, Alonso, such a weird record here. He got his first win here in 2003, and he hasn't won since. So strange. Came close in 2014. Had opportunities 2006. He could have won if he didn't crash as well. That went to Jenson Button eventually, of course, as well.
What happened in 2008? 2007. 2007.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
2007. You know what? I watched the reaction to that. For people who don't know, basically Alonso claims that he was held up by the team in the pits and held up by McLaren, and that stopped Lewis Hamilton doing a lap in qualifying back then. And obviously he just did it himself just to stop Hamilton getting a lap in. Got a penalty for it eventually as well. But I never saw the press conference after. He dead-ass claims, just like, oh yeah, the team held me up. They stopped me from going, even though the lollipop guy's like, go. So yeah, the team held me up. It was all them, not me. Absolutely bizarre. But yeah, 2007. Yeah, let's not talk about that. That was not his finest hour at that point. But yeah, Racing Bulls as well. Lawson seems to be getting a bit of form together now. He's looking a bit better. He's putting some decent performances. And Hadjar, I think, is a real talent as well. So I think they could shake things up as well. But yeah, it's so tight in that lower midfield battle. I mean, 8 points between 6th and ninth. That is tiny. That is tiny. That is a 6th place. Yeah, that's a 6th place nowadays. It's nothing.
Yeah, no, and it's difficult. RBS or racing balls, I even forget what they're called nowadays because it's just they're just so anonymous. Apart from Hadjar putting in some headline performances, I even forget. Like I saw a shot of them. I was like, oh, what car's that? Oh yeah, it's racing balls. I forgot they were even there. They've become the new Sauber. You forget about them. Like you see the Alpine are there because you think, yep, they're at the back again, but racing balls just kind of disappear into the ether, and it's a shame because Lawson deserves better, and Hadjar's been having a fantastic debut season, which is going not completely unnoticed, but to someone just tuning into Formula One, they're probably who's Hadjar, they're probably not even going to know, which is such a shame for a guy with such talent. But there is just so much to play for this weekend, and it's the last one before the summer break. You've got people that are just desperate to get home and have a break. You've got people that are just wanting to throw it into, for caution to the wind, and as plenty of time to get over it. But after picking out all of that, we've now got to make some predictions, George. So there's no sprint or anything. So we've got pole position, we've got podium, and then we've got a bold prediction as well. I've not even thought about this yet, so I reserve the right to change mine when it comes to our prediction league because I'm actually doing well. I'm actually doing well in that. You're doing better. You're doing better, but I'm doing well.
So you're going to have to run that by Louis. He's really strict when it comes to this stuff. I hinted at that once, and he just shut me down. So I'll leave that up to you two to kind of decide. But yeah,
okay.
I've had a little think about mine. Yeah, it was a good weekend last time for me out in Belgium. I got the top 3 absolutely correct, which is rare for sure. Can I do it again this time out? Probably not, but we'll see. we could try. So pole position. I'm gonna go with Lando. I think Lando will get pole. I also think Lando will get the win. Just because Oscar got it last year, I feel like it's going to be Lando this year. I'm going to go with Piastri in second. I think McLaren are just going to be well clear again. I mean, they were last year, and they've been regularly gapping the whole field by at least half a minute this year. So I think it's going to be 1-2 for McLaren comfortably. Then the third place, I really want to give it to Hamilton. Am I going to go with head? Am I going to go with heart? I'm going to be brave. I'm wearing a red shirt. Maybe it's a sign. I'm going to go for Hamilton for third. And because nobody else can go before me, my bold prediction, Franco Colapinto in the points. It's happening. I'm manifesting it. The Argentine sensation in the top 10.
Fantastic. Right. Well, you pretty much picked my 3, so I'm going to change them. And just to troll you, I'm going to go for an Oscar Piastri pole, an Oscar Piastri win with Lando Norris in second, and I'm going to go for a Charles Leclerc podium just to really troll you because I've got to catch up on you. I'm so close to you now. I've got to get ahead of you, so I've just got to go for the opposite. And bold prediction, I'm going to go completely mad and say double Alpine points. There we go. There's my
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's my prediction. So,
somebody check on Tom Horrox.
Yeah. So that's not well. Is it Colapinto or is it Bottas in that car? Who knows? But no, it will be Colapinto. It's too late to change that now, surely. But that's it for our preview. Is there anything you want to plug, George? We're obviously both with Grid Talk, but what is it you want to plug?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to my F1 channel, Formula Reports. If you guys want to check that out on YouTube, we are F1 Chronicle on Facebook and also MSN as well. Just basically where I chat about Formula One. If you enjoy me speaking about it here, you can enjoy me speaking about it over there with less of a filter in some regards as well. The bleep machine does come out every now and again for that sort of stuff. So yeah, thanks for that, mate.
Fantastic. And if you do want to hear more from me, don't worry, the Naked podcast is not till the end of the year. So you can tune in between now and the end of the season if you want to. That's the Monkey Seat podcast. Wherever you find podcasts, just search for that. But Grid Talk is available on YouTube as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search for Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows. previews, reactions, interviews, all kinds of stuff on there. Thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. We really, really appreciate your support. And we could do with some more names on that list. Make this podcast a little bit longer. Add some more names onto that. If you want to support the show further, please sign up to Patreon. And then the more people we get on there, the more exclusive content we're going to make. So please consider that. And make sure you subscribe to us to be the first to know when each episode goes up. So we will be back soon with more plenty of F1 content. So thank you very much for listening and goodbye.
Bye-bye.